So guys, as promised, we're going to test this new EOS R out at the racetrack. So we're going to head up to Goodwood now and see if there's any cars going around the track today, just to test out the high speed frame rate, or not so as the case may be, of this camera. So we know we can get 8 frames a second out of it, but in the servo mode it's coming down towards 5 frames a second. So I just wanted to have a test, to try and shoot some cars, maybe panning, coming into and out of shot, just to see how accurate this camera is. So we'll get underway and we'll see what we can do.
This afternoon for South West England, Wales, the West Midlands and North West England.
So guys, I was going to have a little chat to you when we were up at the circuit there, but unfortunately the heavens opened, as you can see. So I had to make a bit of a mad dash back. So I'm back at home now, just been reviewing some of the images on there. We'll put the official Motorsport YouTube hat on for this video, or maybe not. So I've come back. I'm lucky enough to have been able to use the EF 100-400 lens at Canon. That's the Mark II, which goes from 4.5 to 5.6. So I've shot most of the images on f5.6 just to try and pick up the detail of the subject that I was doing, which is the car in this case, and then try and get as much blurry background before and after that I can on there. Now I've tried it on manual mode, and I've also used the servo autofocus just to see if there was any difference on there between the 8 frames a second and the 5 frames a second of using the autofocus. And I've been blown away, to be honest. I think the lens is absolutely amazing. The camera's done exceptionally well, considering I'm not a professional motorsport photographer. It's just something that I enjoy and it's close to me. So it's been great to get up there and got home, looked at the images, and for me, I'm absolutely blown away. The quality, when you zoom into the images, it's absolutely amazing. So what I'll do is I'll just show you some of the stuff that I've got. I'll put a link at the end to the gallery of the shots that I took that afternoon. You can have a look. You can make up your own decision based on that. So when I set this up, I've used manual mode, and I've basically been adjusting manually the ISO, shutter speed, and f-stop. So the f-stop has been pretty much 5.6 on all my shots, as I mentioned earlier. And then I've just adjusted the shutter speed depending on whether I want to get a sharp image straight ahead, or I actually lower it a little bit if I'm trying to get a pan shot, just as it goes through, to try and pick up a bit of background movement on there. And then I've just adjusted the ISO just to try and make the picture balance from a under and overexposed point of view on them. So the first ones I did was I used the servo autofocus, so it's fairly new to me, but I set it up on single point focusing, and sometimes if I knew where the car was going to be in the composition that I wanted, then I would move the square down and along. This is obviously going to give me the slightly slower rate with the auto focus on 5 frames per second, but to be honest, I didn't really notice an issue with it. You do get a very, very small blackout between the shots, and the biggest hindrance was found was having the image displayed to you after you've taken the shot, because it would pop up and then you then have to sort of press the shutter button again to get rid of it. So I've disabled that on it, and then I can go back and just review them by pressing the play button if I need to on there. So the first shot, so there's a Porsche coming out of the corner, which I've then set the lens up so that I know that it's going to capture the Porsche full frame once it gets to the area that I want it to. On this one I've got the shutter speed set at 125 f6, and the ISO worked out at 100 on this one, and the lens is 227, as you can see there. So both of these are with the autofocus selected, and yeah, really amazed with what it's picked up actually. You can see here it's got the JPEG, and as it runs through you can see here then you've got the C RAW image, which I've just corrected in Lightroom just to my taste on there. So that was the first image that we've looked at, and as you can see when you zoom in it's sharp. It's just an absolutely incredible lens on it. So the next thing I tried was to shoot some shots in manual, a few panning shots, and again I'm no expert, it's just something I quite enjoy doing. As the car was exiting the chicane and accelerating, the idea was to try and pan through with the car and just try and see how many shots that I could get that were in focus. How I did it was I composed a shot when the car was ahead of me and set the manual focus where I thought the car was going to be. So I basically fixated on the ground and used the focus assist with the small dials that you can use to set it in focus inside of your square. You can use the focus peaking for this as well, but I quite like using the focus guide on there. So then the idea was, as the car came through, I could just use the max 8 frames a second shutter to try and capture that. There's obviously a little bit of luck involved in this, of whether you're going to pick up the correct focus point on here, but it worked out pretty well. I don't think it was quite as good as a servo autofocus on there, but again you can make your own mind up from what you can see. See on here the JPEG was shot and the C RAW 1/320 5.6 IC 200, and the lens was set at 107 millimeters, and then on the lens I had it on stabilizer mode setting 2, which is the panning mode. If you're not familiar with the stabilization modes with the 100/400, the stabilizer mode 1 is basically for everything, 2 is for panning mode, and then 3 basically turns the stabilization mode off until you take the shot, and then it enables it for the actual shot that takes place on there. The other little setting which is on this lens, which is pretty much different to anything else, is you've got the option of full and 3 meters to infinity. So I guess it just takes a little bit of the hunting out of the lens if it knows that it doesn't need to shoot below 3 meters. So I had it set on that setting. So as we move on through to the next one, the same car that came around the second time, I used the servo autofocus on there, and as you can see the JPEGs as it came through, now it's reduced down to 5 frames a second, and I used the one 320 f 5.6 and ISO 200 again on this one, and I think it was slightly sharper on there. I was really impressed with it, and I don't think for the sake of having 5 frames rather than the 7 frames made a huge difference on there. I still think it picked up the car really nicely, certainly for my needs on there. So we move on to another manual shot. Again here you can see the JPEG shots as we move through the frame, and didn't do so well on this one. There was a few that were out of focus, but there was one as it just got towards the end that it picked up on, so my focusing was a little bit out with the manual focus on here. And then as you can see the JPEG image that the camera produced, which was done at 1/60 of a second 5.6 ISO 100, and that was just shot at 100 millimeters because it was quite close to the side of the track here. And then the C RAW and the Lightroom edited version here as well. I'm really impressed with the quality of this camera and the lens, I say, compared with the Fuji XT3 and the 55-200, which admittedly is not the same lens as the 100-400. They do a bigger lens, which is supposed to be very good, but I never got to use that. But certainly compared with the two here for my needs, the clarity, sharpness is just unbelievable. And as you can see here on this edited version in Lightroom there, when you actually zoom in and just look around the details, it's just absolutely phenomenal. So it's really impressed with what this camera and lens can do. So I was absolutely blown away by the quality of this lens. It was just unbelievable, and the EOS R just performed so well, both in manual and in the autofocus settings from what I've been used to from my Fuji. So yeah, it is heavier, and certainly your arm gets tired once you've been holding this lens up for a little bit of time. And as I mentioned in the last video, if you're shooting in full frame, you do have to use the settings a bit more, change the ISO, the shutter speed, the settings, because it's just that much more sensitive, I've found anyway. The bit I do miss is having that third dial with this camera, so that I can adjust my f-stop, ISO and shutter speed on there. I've customized the two, and with the new RF lenses it's great because you've got a control ring, so you do get that back, but with this EF lens you don't have that on the lens itself. So what I've done is I've set the shutter speed on the front dial, I've set the f-stop on the back dial, and then I use the multi-function which pops up the ISO, and then I can use the wheel, the front wheel, to adjust the ISO as needed, purely because you don't have that control ring on the actual lens itself. Now I guess you could buy the control ring instead of the adapter that goes, the EF adapter that goes on here, and that would probably solve the problem also. So it was just a workaround, something that I found it was a bit of a pain on the day, but now I've set it up, it seems to work quite well for me on there. Managed to take a nice image while I was there. There was an aircraft that came in over my head, so I just managed to swing around very quickly. So this was taken at 160 f/5.6 again, ISO 100. It was just against quite a glary background there, so I didn't need any more, and it was at full length at 400mm with the servo autofocus on there. I took quite a few shots at it coming in. Obviously at 400mm it's quite hard to keep track of the aircraft as it came in, and I guess that's the downside of having that slight blackout on the lens, is that if you are focusing in, especially if you've got a higher range lens greater than 400, if you're shooting players on a football pitch for instance, you might find with that slight blackout that the players actually moved, and then it's really hard to find them again on there. But that's maybe something I'll test out in the future. So probably 50% of the shots that I took came out in focus on there, but this was just the nicest one with the composition as it sort of banked its wing over a little bit towards me rather than shooting sort of up underneath of it. And as you can see, if I zoom in on here, I'll try not to keep the guys' faces out, but just again, the quality of this lens is just absolutely stunning. I'm just totally blown away by it, to be honest. It's certainly well worth the extra weight carrying it around and using it. So I haven't tested this out in anything other than manual mode. It's just, manual is just what I do, that's what I've used, that's what I've always done, so that's what I like. It just means I can take control of the photograph, and I know that I'm going to get what I want with what I've set. So if you want me to test out in some of the other modes, then put it in the comments below, and I'm more than happy to go out and do some tests on that if it helps you out. So the main reason for doing this video was when I was looking into moving across to the Canon R, was it didn't seem to be a massive amount of real world user reviews on it. So this was just my giving back to you guys. It maybe help you in making that decision to come across to it if you do. Thanks for watching. It's been a pleasure making it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel, and I'm going to do some more reviews. I'm going to get out. I want to try and do a little bit of landscape shots and test this camera out with some of the functionality and some of the things that it can do. So as I say, thanks again for watching, and to catch you next time.